Welcome to today's Finextra Research webinar, Ensuring Interoperability in the Age of Global Cross-Border E-Invoicing. I'm Scott Hamilton, contributing editor for Finextra, and I'm here to lead a conversation on that topic and some related questions. We welcome also a fantastic group of experts to our panel, leaders in their industries from the electronic invoicing technology world. Though before we jump further into the topic, a couple of housekeeping announcements. First, you're encouraged to ask questions, and we'll do all we can to answer as many as we can during the session. You'll also have a chance to weigh in on poll questions that we'll pose to our audience at 2 points during our conversation today. So please take the opportunity to share your thoughts at these times. Also, there's a handy ebook provided by our sponsor, Flowin, for download by our viewers. Our topic's flavor is timely and, like so many issues associated with financial services and software and regulation, a bit complex. Are European businesses prepared for big changes in the way e-invoicing is handled? How does PEPL, or the Pan-European Public Procurement Online standard, fit in? And what are continuous trade controls and the five-corner system? We'll find out during our session today. First, some background, though. In late 2022, the European Commission proposed measures to modernize the EU's value-added tax system. Why? Because, quoting the Commission on the topic, EU countries lost 99 billion euros in VAT revenues in 2020. Conservative estimates suggest that 1/4 of the missing revenues can be attributed directly to VAT fraud linked to intra-EU trade. In addition, VAT arrangements in the EU can still be burdensome for businesses, especially SMEs or small to medium-sized enterprises, scale-ups, and companies operating cross-border. So VITA, which stands for Value-Added Taxation in the Digital Age, is designed to help EU countries collect circa 18 billion euros more in VAT revenues annually, reduce fraud in the process, and also help businesses, including those SMEs, to grow and address challenges to VAT in light of what they call our fast-developing platform economy. We're going to take a deep look at VITA and what it means on several levels for European businesses, governments, and efforts to simplify and speed commerce between companies. To do so, we put together an outstanding group of panelists to describe the landscape, provide unvarnished recommendations, share stories around solutions, and some cautionary tales about those who might be ignoring the opportunities VITA presents or its warning signs. They'll provide expert insight on likely implementation scenarios, as well as reasons to act now rather than wait around. This sounds like a recipe for success in most endeavors, and our panelists who will help us explore these facts, scenarios, and related questions are Paul Simons, e-invoicing advisor and PEPL post-award community leader for Flowin, Anna Norden, principal regulatory affairs for Sovos, and Nazar Paradivsky, who is Vice President Regulatory Affairs for Pagero, and he's also a community leader in Open PEPL and other industry groups. Paul, let's start things off with you. You and your company are on the forefront of this issue, and you're an expert on the advantages of PEPL as an e-invoicing standard. Help us set the stage for the Finextra audience. What's most important in terms of basic understanding of this interoperability when it comes to VITA? And where the organizations of our viewers stand on this and the topic of e-invoicing. How should any company be preparing for the VITA rollout right now, and why? What are the benefits they might see in doing so?
Good afternoon, everyone. Indeed, when it comes to interoperability regarding VITA, VITA mandates the use of electronic invoices that comply with the European standard, being the EN 16931. This means that if you send invoices across Europe, more particularly towards other countries inside Europe, you are sure that when you send your invoice, your recipient in another country can accept that invoice and can understand it, can read it, and can process it because of this one common standard. It is also important to note that there was long ago, 2014, the Directive 2014-55 that mandated public services to accept electronic invoices that comply to the same European standard. So companies that already invoice to public services, they already use that same standard. So in that sense, it's definitely a gain that with the same standard, you can continue sending invoices across Europe. Why now, and what are the benefits? To start with why now, We all know that invoices run through the complete company. It's just not a document to comply with legislation, so to say. The invoices, they circulate inside the whole organization through validation processes, etc., etc. So you have to get everybody on the same page, and that will take some time. Obviously, depending on the maturity of your company, if it's mid-size or large, you probably already do e-invoicing for a long time. But for SMEs, it might be brand new. And we know by experience that many very small businesses don't use software nowadays. They use Word and Excel or even on paper. So they will have to get used to working with software, buying a software, communicating to their customers and suppliers. So that might take some time, and you better prepare early than late. Moreover, I would say that in multiple countries, there is already a national obligation. Take Italy, France, etc., etc. Belgium kicks in end of next year. So it's not only about ViDA, it's also national legislation that kicks in and mandates sending and receiving electronic invoices in a B2B context. So you better start rather today than tomorrow.
Excellent overview. And next we'll hear from Anna Nordin, who's also deeply experienced in both the legal and operational aspects of e-invoicing and what's coming with ViDA for Europe. Anna, can you respond to Paul's opening remarks and help our audience understand a little bit more, or any other elements of the landscape of ViDA, how it's likely to be implemented, what's actually occurred within the EU in terms of its approval up till now, what it might look in its final form for implementation, and also, this is a good question, should companies just wait and see? Or maybe why this might be the best time to start, as Paul pointed out, to ensure they're prepared for ViDA's emergence on the scene.
Thank you very much. The answer to the question whether companies should wait and see is no. They should act. I know that politicians are media trained to never answer any questions yes or no, but I think for clarity reasons, it's very good if we in this seminar can use those two words and then perhaps back them up with a bit of explanation. But when it comes to the situation in the EU with this VAT in the digital age package, it was proposed already late 2022 by the Commission. It led to quite some debate and discussion and a lot of negotiations, but last spring, now May 2024, it had made its way through the EU legislative machinery and was ready to be adopted by the ECOFIN Council, which is the ministry level, the Ministry of Finance, who meet and who had to unanimously agree for this package to move forward. This did, however, not happen because Estonia opposed to certain rules regarding the platform economy. And although those rules have nothing to do with the e-invoicing and e-reporting regulation that we're discussing here today, it still meant that since this is a package, ViDA could not move forward. So there was another attempt in June, after which the presidency moved from Belgium to Hungary. And the status we're at now is that Hungary has continued negotiations and assessed that they have a good chance to get this through the ECOFIN November meeting. And once that is done, there are still some formalities left because we had European Parliament elections since ViDA was adopted in that forum. But nevertheless, we believe that within some 6 months, we could have ViDA adopted by the EU.
Wow. So lots of moving parts and people involved. Thank you, Anna, very much for that. Nazar, you've also been deeply involved in the promotion of e-invoicing, Peppol as a superior standard. You've talked to many, many companies when you and I spoke You said you talked to a lot of people and how they're supposed to be preparing to move forward with ViDA. What does the landscape look like for you with regard to e-invoicing and ViDA? And what have you heard from those clients that gives you hope for a strong first entry for ViDA as a European standard? And also, what are some of the concerns you heard regarding the challenges or potential obstacles to ViDA being as successful as it could be? Any perceptions or expectations you might want to share? We talked here a little bit about, you said sometimes people are focused on the wrong things. What are your thoughts on where we stand now?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Scott. And I think if I can sort of start with the bad news first and then finish with good news, I think it's important to keep in mind for everyone, and especially both within the EU, but as well for our listeners outside of the EU, that EU is actually a union of 27 member states, right? And each member state is responsible for its own fiscal policies, and they are independent in that sense. And so that should as well be seen in light with what Anna just said, right? So ViDA is a compromise text. You have 27 countries that need to agree on something. And so this leads to the fact that if you try to read ViDA proposal, the texts are quite cryptic, right? I have myself probably read that text 15 or maybe 20 times. I had numerous discussions with, including Paul and Anna and other experts, trying to decode what does this sentence actually mean? What are they telling us? And sort of apply our experiences from existing implementations. Aha, they maybe mean this. So it is not so easy to understand what ViDA actually is saying. And this is probably the biggest challenge for businesses, which as well has led to a number of misconceptions or misunderstandings when talking to companies. And like you mentioned, Scott, prior to this, we've discussed a couple of things, and there's two maybe that I would like to call out for our audience, and that is the fact that ViDA talks about e-invoicing and digital reporting requirement, and it is not the same thing, right? So e-invoicing in this context would be exchange of electronic invoices in the standard that Paul was mentioning directly between the supplier and the buyer, whereas the DRR is a construct on top of that electronic invoice. So you could almost see that it's two different obligations. However, the design of ViDA is aiming for that to be a smooth process. So it should be one process for the business, but actually two different obligations to comply with. And that is very sort of intimately almost relating to the second misconception, and that is the timelines. So obviously, the first version published in 2022, now we have a new version, and it's mentioning a couple of timelines when different obligations enter into force. And what I hear from everyone is obviously 2030, and that's the timeline when e-invoicing and DRR become mandatory for the intra-community transactions. But what pretty much every company, at least I've been speaking to, is missing out is the fact that a country, as soon as ViDA is approved, a country could mandate domestic e-invoicing the day after. So even if 2030 maybe is changed, or even if it stays as it is, businesses should be ready to work with e-invoicing the day after. It will not happen the day after, so that's my positive spin to it. Governments still need to prepare. They need to transpose ViDA, because ViDA is a directive. So ViDA is not directly applicable for every member state. They will have to put in place their own legislation specifying ViDA. But in theory, it's possible that it starts the day after. And that is at the same time creating opportunities for businesses who have already been more tax savvy, e-invoicing savvy. They've started earlier. Maybe they've been doing B2G invoicing, as Paul mentioned. So for them, it's a great opportunity to start sooner than later with Vida.
Absolutely.
Can I just add quickly to that, sorry, because you are so right in that people mistakenly focus on this date 2030, whereas directly from the point in time where Vida will be adopted and come into force, we have a situation where the member states no longer need to request a derogation in order to implement a B2B mandate in their jurisdiction. So we could have the floodgates open within 6 months, not in 6 years. And this is why it's important, of course, to start preparing at this point in time already.
Seems to make sense to me. Paul, any thoughts you'd add to Anna's and Nazar's points? And what are the critical, the tough questions that you'd ask first if you were looking at building this, if we were looking at trying to actually do what we just said, to actually take action now? What would you do right from the start and down the road, even if some of those iterations from individual countries might throw a bit of a wrench? And how will those national transactions or national rules likely play, or how can we adapt to those, or how can an organization adapt to them when Vida is implemented on a regional scale as the fifth corner comes into play for e-invoicing?
Mm-hmm. Well, there are different things that play a role here. I think, history will tell us, or the future will tell us what the history brought. This being said, we see already countries that have already the mandate in place. Other countries kick in prior to Vida. We have Belgium 2026, we have Germany 27 time frame. Some countries are a little bit lacking behind. Some countries are already live. Italy and France will go next year. So I think in real life, many countries will have the mandate in place prior to Vida kicking in. That's my expectation. The reason is, I would say pretty straightforward in the sense that, taking Italy as an example, they closed the VAT gap by a big percentage just by mandating their national platform. So the example is there why countries do it. It's to better collect taxes, and that's one of the main drivers used. This being said, what Nazar and Anna said, indeed, once Vida gets approved, countries will no longer have to ask for an exception to mandate e-invoicing at the national level. That means that, and Belgium was one of the countries waiting for that, so countries can kick in at an early stage if they want to. So, yeah. Again, a reason, don't wait until tomorrow what you can do today. It will take some time. You have to prepare, and that will take time. Even for companies that are mid-sized and have already e-invoicing in place, this is another way of sending and receiving invoices, another format. You have to make sure that the flow still works when you inject XML files, because many of these workflows work with PDFs and do not work yet with XML files. So you have to make sure that the document flow stays alive and kicking in your organization. So it's important to make sure that all stakeholders in your company and outside are on the same page and are aware of this change and can deal with this new flow.
Thanks, Paul. I think this is a great time for us to take the pulse of our audience and a poll. So we'll go ahead and put that up on the screen. It's, what is your organization's current level of readiness for mandatory e-invoicing? Whether it's fully prepared, in progress, or just getting started. Anna, we're gonna go ahead and let the poll run for a bit, and while we do that, we'll just jump back to you. Any other further comments you have regarding where we stand right now, and maybe your thoughts on what would delaying that preparation for that rollout? And you talked about it a little bit already, but maybe even you could add, what would it cost companies who do so?
Well, I don't think I can comment on the cost as such, but what I can say is that we often talk in this context about small companies and how can we ensure that small companies can manage this in a smooth manner, etc. But I think that small companies are not up for the biggest challenge because they will be able to find service providers that can hopefully help them in a relatively simple manner and hopefully relatively cost effectively too, because small companies don't have a very complex system of internal processes. I think larger corporations have much more homework to do. They need to get their internal processes in order. They need to run this as a project that does not only involve the IT department. It's not just finance. This is a project where you need to involve many different departments of your company, which in turn makes it a complex project, which then tends to make these projects slower in their progress, which is a reason for getting started. And not getting started in time, thereby risking delays, it could mean that you end up in a situation where you cannot be compliant when you need to be compliant, or you end up in a time squeeze and you don't have enough time to evaluate how do you want to solve the problem. Do you want to go with one service provider or the other, and you have to make hasty decisions. So that's a reason for, I would say, for larger corporations to take this quite seriously. And as Paul mentioned, most of them, of course, already do e-invoicing today, but this will be different because this will require you to have a totally different level of control of your internal processes and data quality.
Yeah,
that was interesting. I hit you with all the tough ones, all the problems. And, when I go to Nassar, it's going to be, what are some of the opportunities, but really it is, how does this play into competitiveness? Let's go ahead and show the results of the poll. And, I think that's the issue is here. There's a lot of choices. There's technology issues that Paul pointed out. I mean, maybe on a positive side, they're already doing it, so they're ready to go. But they may not be ready for PEPL, So can you talk to me about how this is going to work in terms of standardization or the ideal paths to take? And then your thoughts on the poll results as well.
Shall I go first?
Actually, if you'd like, we can go with you first, then we can go to Nassar. That's great, Paul. Yeah, we got a 50-50 split.
Okay, maybe comment on the result of the poll yet. Well, it does not surprise me, to be honest, although I would like to see the numbers a little bit different. But is it a surprise? No, not really. As said, people think, oh, this is far away, 2030, who cares? And it will change in the meantime, as we see happen at regular intervals with legislation that gets delayed. So it does not come to a surprise. Although, on the other hand, the fact that it seems that either people are in the progress or just beginning. That means that they are aware it is coming and they have started. Even if they started yesterday, it's better than starting next year. So in that sense, it's a positive signal. We would have hoped that fully prepared would maybe have some percentages as well. But the positive sign from this statistic shows that people are aware it is coming and that they have to take this seriously. Because even if 2030 is a long way away, It will take some time to adapt all the systems, and as said and confirmed by Anna and Nazar, depending on the size of your country and the maturity of your company, you will have to do more or less, and it will be a quick and dirty thing, or it will take a lot of time to implement this new legislation. So I think this, as a conclusion, for me, this is a positive number that everybody is either in progress or at least starting to get compliant. So that's good.
Paul, we'll come back to you in a minute because I want to ask the rest of the question for here, but because I have another question, but Nazar, same thing. The question to you, what do you think about the results? How do you feel about this as it plays into competitiveness and so forth?
Yeah, I'm actually happy that it's a 0 on fully prepared, because I would say that probably it's a delusional person who says I'm fully prepared for VIDA. So it's actually good. You know, I believe, you know, it's very important to speak about the preparations, because I really want to tie it almost a bit more to what Anna said, because very often when talking to clients, the typical question would be, how long time does it take to implement your solution, right? And I'm sure Paul and Anna recognize this question, and surely the answer from their side is, you know, our solution can be deployed in a couple of days, but are you ready as a client? And this is the piece that most businesses underestimate, because implementation of an e-invoicing solution, it's the very final step that would make you compliant and really, you know, reap all the benefits of going fully digital. So in this preparation phase can be quite lengthy, because one of the biggest mistakes I believe businesses could do in this process is to actually fail on the step of requirements gathering by not including all relevant stakeholders. So again, tying back to what Anna said, but I really want to sort of call out very, very many times when talking to a client, you know, you will have either the tax team sort of in charge of it, or you will have maybe the IT team in charge of it. But then when you start unpeeling it and you start asking questions, but have you thought how this change will impact your business relationship with your trading partners? If you have a support team, are they involved? Have you considered how this might impact your, you know, liquidity position? Is your finance team involved in it? So really, you know, for the preparation, I would like to really stress on the fact of, you know, bring all your relevant, well, all your stakeholders and ask them, because, you know, Scott, one of the anecdotes in our industry is, you know, if you get into a room with people and you ask who owns invoice in your company, you either get 0 hands or everyone raising their hand. And that's really, you know, hitting on the problem or the challenge of it, right? It's important to be pragmatic and really get all your stakeholders aboard.
Talk about a difficult scenario. Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is this comes up in almost everything we talk about here at Finextra, that many times certain stakeholders are just not consulted. You end up with a last minute scramble to try to be ready. Someone says, no, you're not going. And I didn't get the memo, you know, that kind of thing. So Anna, we have a question from the audience that specifically talks about how this is going to work intra-country. Okay, so it is my understanding that intra-country invoices will be mandatory and local non-mandatory. If this is the case, would this require to keep VIDA and non-VIDA at the same time, making it more costly and expensive to run? Can you address that, please?
So the area that the Commission can regulate is the cross-border situation or the intra-community invoices. But VIDA allows member states to do both mandatory invoicing and mandatory reporting domestically as well. So while we'll have the cross-border invoices mandatory from 2030, and this has been adjusted. I see there is also a question as to whether it is 2028 or 2030, but it is 2030 that is the current date. So while the intra-community situation will be regulated by that date, member states will be free to introduce mandatory e-invoicing domestically as soon as ViDA has come into force.
Excellent. Thank you for addressing that. I'm pretty sure we talked about that when you and I spoke. We talked about the dates. And I think people, if I've gotten one message from this, is that people should not be focusing so much on exact dates as getting prepared so that they can meet whatever dates come out and whatever changes occur. Paul, we said we were going to come back to you. Give your thoughts on this and what elements absolutely must be in place for you to achieve, positive results with any kind of an upgrade. We talked about getting all the stakeholders involved and knowing that fifth corner is going to come into play here as a new point in the process.
Mm-hmm. Well, you definitely need to talk to all your stakeholders, and that will be different depending on the size of your company. What often gets forgotten is that, especially for SMEs, the external accountant plays a role as well, because usually the accounting is done by an external accountant and not by the company itself. That means that, and we've seen many good examples in Belgium where accountants promote certain software or certain solutions because it is compliant with their accounting system. So that also automates importing of documents and communication between the customer and the accountant itself. So it's not only a question of internal routing of documents, certainly for SMEs, external routing to the external accountant is very important as well. There was a question in the chat as well, what happens with factoring companies and loans, one-stop loans for getting money to pay your invoices. Obviously, these are flows that come in the picture as well. How do you get your invoices to your bank if you need a loan, etc., etc.? So these are all things that you need to consider. This being said, good and bad examples. If I can refer to Belgium, Belgium implemented Peppol to send invoices to the government, and we all know Peppol is a four-corner model, so that facilitates the implementation. With one connection, you can send invoices to whoever and wherever, what service provider they meet. We will come to Peppol in a second, but that's a good example how things can be done in an easy way and in a cost-effective way. Because obviously, ViDA is one thing, but you will have to get your invoices sent to your customers as well in an electronic way, and that you need to figure out as well. In some countries, a national platform might be mandatory, while in others not. So that needs your consideration as well. Who are your customers? Where are they located? Are there requirements there? So yes, Peppol can be an answer for all of these questions. But obviously, as Nadar and Anna already mentioned, countries have a certain freedom to comply with the DRR in that case. And in the examples, I must say, as the good news, in the examples we see and we hear from tax authorities, they plan to do the DRR for the national reporting, to do that in the same way than they do for the intracom. So that's the good news. Although countries have some freedom, the DRR will be most likely done in the same way than national transactions. So in that sense, you will not have to run two systems in parallel, although you might have another way for sending invoices to another country than you do for national transactions. But I guess, and we've seen that in real life, softwares are aware of that, service providers are aware of that situation, and they make sure that you can send and receive invoices to the customers wherever they are. So yes, there will be a challenge, and we are skipping a few questions now, I guess. But when you select your partners, and partners in the sense of software partners and service providers, you have to make sure that they are reliable and fiable, as we say in good French. You have to be sure that when you select partners, make sure that they are reliable from commercial, from financial point of view, and that they are still there tomorrow. Because switching software, you do not do that every day, and you avoid doing that every day anyway. So pick the right partners and make sure that you are compliant and stay compliant for the number of years ahead.
There's a lot you've packed in there, and the message that I keep hearing is manage to the rule and handle the exception, not the other way around. And I think you answered very well that question about, do I have to maintain different systems? Well, you might have to have the occasional exceptions to manage national requirements, but in general, these systems should not put that much of they should be a net positive, rather than a negative. Let's go ahead and put the second poll up right now for the audience. Which aspect of e-invoicing integration you find most challenging? Is it understanding those regulations or selecting the right e-invoicing service provider, or is it integrating with your existing platforms and systems? That is the question we're going to raise to the audience. Please weigh in on that. And as we move forward, Paul did address quite a few of the questions that we had about what really gives companies the most bang for their buck. What really should they be looking for in a partner to help make all this happen, this e-invoicing come to the fore with the flexibility you need to handle the individual countries and so forth. Nassar, anything you'd add to either Anna's or Paul's comments and answers here? And when we talked to you last, we talked about, you did give both the good and the bad, but what do you see as any perils? Maybe a little bit more about maybe specific examples you have from your experience on the blind spots that have kept people from making the decision, or that you see them potentially falling into as we move forward with Vida implementation.
If I can start this question by disagreeing with Paul on the question of DRR, I have a feeling, if I can call it like that, from domestic perspective, a good number of member states actually indicate that they will have quite varying DRR requirements, and now we are talking from a content perspective, what data you need to be reporting to local tax administrations, and that is again tying back to the question we spoke about previously. And that is the good and the bad, right? From when dealing with clients, it's a night and day whether they have done preparations or not. And it goes so much quicker and smoother if they know what exactly is their requirements. So what are we focusing on? Which countries do we need? What is our backend systems? Where our data is? Which teams will be working, on daily basis with the invoicing, as opposed to, hey, we need an invoicing solution. Can we start tomorrow? And typically, it will take maybe another year before they actually come back to you and actually start implementing something. And a good, I think, approach to the Vida developments is I wouldn't be focusing on the DRR that much if I was a business, especially, and I will now talk more from the same angle that Anna approached it, from multinational, a company that is operating in multiple countries. What I would focus on is to select a good partner from e-invoicing perspective, and I would start with that. And I would have as my requirement on that partner, when the DRR enters into force, you should just do it when it enters into force, as simple as that, because this will allow you to get digital quicker, and there's good benefits to obtain from it already today. You as a company, you can improve your day sales outstanding, you can improve your working capital, you can improve experience of your suppliers and your buyers if you go digital, right? And then as Vida is formulated, irrespective of whether we are talking about intra-community or domestic transactions, the data that must be shipped to the tax administration is only the data that resides in an invoice, right? So I believe that businesses can be very egoistic in this sense and just say, why should I look for one e-invoicing and one DRR solution? I should find someone who can provide me with both. And so when the DRR element enters into force in 2030 or whatever the date will be, that's irrelevant. That provider should just enable those capabilities.
Thank you very much. It sounds like what you're saying is, there are partners out there that will provide all the angles or could handle all the angles or most of them, and certainly give you that flexibility that we started out and that you've all been emphasizing throughout. Let's go ahead and show the results of our poll up on screen here, and then we'll move on here to Anna. Looks like the majority are saying that their biggest challenge is in integrating with existing systems. I guess that's not too surprising, but then I'll leave that all to have you weigh in a moment here, Anna. Selecting the right invoicing provider, about a quarter, and then understanding the regs as we explain them here. So you all said it was tough to understand the regulations, and so everyone seems to think that's not as big of an issue as integration and selecting the right provider. Anna, what do you think first about the audience response? And we talked again about the cost, so maybe we could talk more about, is Peppol, and then I know you're all experts in Peppol. We've got two people here who are really, really focused on Peppol, so maybe we could talk a little bit about that in a minute. But first, Anna, what do you think of the audience response?
I think it's interesting, and I suppose a good thing that it's not all that many who feel that the regulatory landscape is a difficult one. And let's hope that is not because they don't grasp the full extent of it, but because either they are on top of it or they work with a service provider who is, which means that they don't themselves need to be aware of everything. When it comes to the integration issues, I wonder if this has to do with the difficulties in the actual operational integration process with a service provider, or whether part of this is also the process of aligning internal systems, ERP systems, getting the data right. And Nazar is nodding. You think that it is also the second part that is included?
Great.
I think you are putting a very constructive counter question to it, because it's very hard to unpeel what people had in mind when answering to this question. And from experience, it typically would be the latter than the first reasoning that Anna brought up.
Yeah, I'm kind of wondering here, Paul, your thoughts on that second poll, and then what you might add to what Anna just said and what Nazar said. Peppol, there's a question that came from the audience, or what are some common pitfalls that software companies encounter in integration when they're trying to work with integrating both e-invoicing and other aspects? We did have another question as well that asked something similar about what are the real challenges here with other aspects of other important documents that e-invoicing plays into, and where Vida might talk about these. So maybe you could talk a little about how this is going to work from the integration phase. We've talked a lot about the partners and the people involved, but talk about that and the systems, please.
Yeah, well, indeed, looking at the poll, to me, it does not come really as a surprise in the sense that understanding regulation, I think Anna is right in saying that companies rely on their system, on their software they use, on their service provider they use to make sure that their system is compliant to applicable legislation. And in that sense, integrating with existing systems, I would expect this, the answer from mid-size or larger organizations that have already many things in place, many workflows in place, and obviously they will need to comply and deal with this new way of sending and receiving invoices. So that might be more complex due to the size and the nature of the maturity of the company. Coming to Peppol, is this a solution? Well, Peppol can bring a solution, and we hope that many countries choose for Peppol to comply to ViDA, because again, that would standardize not only the content of the invoice, the standard itself, but it would also, how shall I say, standardize the way we send and receive invoices and the network we use to send and receive invoice in a secure and reliable way. We know that ViDA today does not mandate the use of Peppol. Many people wanted that or hoped it would be mandatory, but it didn't make it for, as Nadar said, you have to find, how shall I say, an agreement between 27 countries, and they all have different looks and feels, so to say. So the expectation is, however, that over time countries will come to common sense and have at least Peppol as one way of sending and receiving invoices. Maybe they will open the door for national platforms, but at least allow Peppol as a player in their system. We've seen it in France, where there are still talks to integrate Peppol into their models that they are putting in place this year and next year. So it's the same. You could compare it with the mobile phones. Once upon a time, certain mobile phone providers, they thought they could rule the world and mandate their system on top of the whole world. But real life showed that they were wrong, and an international network like we have today in the mobile phone, well, the market went for that model because, it opens the door for ease of use and does not exclude anyone that does not have a phone from this very specific phone company. So in that sense, we can hope that over time, more and more countries will at least allow Peppol or support Peppol in their national system, and the market, that's my strongest belief, over time will evolve and come to a common conclusion. It's funny, by the way, that when we look outside Europe, we see countries like Malaysia, Singapore, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, and I can mention a few others. They choose for Peppol because they see the benefit of having one system for national transactions and at the same time reach out at the global level and connect to other countries in other jurisdictions. So it's funny to see that newcomers are more convinced, so to say, than certain EU countries that think they have to do it in their own way. But this being said, I have the strongest belief that over time, common sense will prevail, and in the end, we will have one way of doing things, although it might go in two steps rather than in one single step, as we all hope for. But this being said, let's keep the good news in the back of our mind, I would say.
Yeah, and Paul, what funny thing is when I was interviewing each of you and doing my own research, you all made it clear that Peppol was superior. And what's interesting about Peppol is it seems to be that it's anticipated a number of the questions that would come up, as you mentioned, the evolving standards. It's already anticipated a number of those questions. So it's broad enough, not too generic, but broad enough that it could actually accomplish the objectives people have. And Nassar, what I want to talk to you about is focusing on those advantages of e-invoicing and what we talked about, being ready not only to integrate, but also regulatory readiness, how that company can actually make sure its trading relationships are stronger than they've been, down the road, perhaps. Any particular approaches, results that you find especially compelling? And, does this create broader momentum for what some of our people are asking from the audience about other procedures and processes?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, when answering this question, I would like to sort of relate back to the topic of our session, right? It's interoperability. And I just realized we've been talking a lot about compliance and very little about interoperability. So maybe a quick and very simple sort of an explanation for our audience what interoperability is and why we talk about it. I've just opened up my phone. I have an app for SMS. I have Facebook Messenger. I have WhatsApp. I have Skype, and I have Telegram, and I have Viber. So and then on my computer, I have Teams. I have 7 different applications to communicate with people. Now, interoperability is the opposite of it. It doesn't matter which application you want or prefer to use for typing and reading messages. It just should work. And so what I bring up by this example, there is no interoperability between these different applications. You are locked, or you need to sort of get multiple of them and potentially pay extra money to each of them instead of having one. And that is what interoperability is about. You should have only one application, basically one invoicing provider, and that invoicing provider should be interoperable with all other invoicing providers. So you don't need to sit in 6 different interfaces and pay 6 different, charges, fees, or whatever. So we've spoken about it, like what is important when, looking for a service provider. And an interoperable service provider in this sense is key. Someone who is open to send and receive data from other systems. And Peppol is very good. It's by far most dominant standard today. Is it the only interop standard? It's not. There are other interop standards. And so when our audience would be, researching for a software provider, service provider after this, they should basically have a checklist and compare how interoperable that provider is. Do they have Peppol? Do they have DBNA Alliance? Do they have GINA? Do they have bilateral interop agreements with other providers in countries that hasn't adopted Peppol yet? And that is the key to achieve that customer satisfaction, Scott, that you talk about. Because if I need to sit in 10 or 15 manual portals, I'm not happy as a business. I want to have one, ideally seamless.
We want our customers to be happy, and that's probably, you brought it perfectly back around to the theme of this entire webinar, which is that interoperability. Let's go ahead and wrap up here with some final questions. Very simple. We'll start with Anna, but Anna, what would you prioritize? And this is for each one of you to answer. What would you prioritize right now regarding the invoicing choices and system transformation decisions? What's one key element that you would caution companies not to forget when they embark upon embracing this e-invoicing mandate, this major change with ViDA?
I think if I were a reasonably large company or a large corporation, I would start by ensuring that I have my internal processes straight. And I would ensure to include all stakeholders within the company. And the other thing I would do is to choose a service provider wisely. Look at what your needs are and see where you can find that service, but of course also including not just the functional requirements, but also security, ongoing compliance. It's not just a matter of a snapshot in time, and that regulatory situation should be implemented as functional requirements. We have a situation where compliance evolves, regulations change, and you need to use a service provider that constantly can monitor and update their services to remain compliant over time. So these are the two things that I would do.
Makes sense. Nazar, your thought, one thing or one couple key things.
I can only echo to what Anna said. Do your homework, do your requirements gathering, gather your stakeholders, and try to capture as many of your requirements as possible, compliance and business requirements together, because again, you don't want to end up with 15 different applications to do this. You want to have one, so it is smooth for everyone, and don't get a BlackBerry. We all know how it ended.
Oh, I love it. Perfect lead into you, Paul, to kind of wrap things up for us. Your thoughts on the basic or the most important priorities right now.
Well, I think being last in the row is not very, how shall I say, helpful to be original. I can only agree with Nazar and with Anna. Do your homework. It's important because it's an important part of your business. If that does not run smoothly, your business is jeopardized, I would say. So prepare yourselves and better start today than tomorrow. Because we've said it multiple times. It will take some time to get prepared and to get acquainted with this new way of working.
Well, thank you all. We talked about delivering a recipe for success, and I really think we've done it with this webinar. People should be well prepared for VIDA. I would just like to thank my panelists, Paul Simones from our sponsor, Flowen, Anna Norden from Sovos, and Nazar Paradivsky from Pagero. Thank you all for your wonderful contributions. Thanks to our audience for your questions and for your poll results and weighing in on our polls. If you'd like to look at this webinar later, you can get it on playback, and feel free to download the resources provided. Also get in touch with these folks later. Thanks again for coming. It's been another great Finextra webinar. Hope everyone has a great day and the rest of your week. Thanks and goodbye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.